Welcome back. Thank you. Welcome back to everyone in the room and to the people on the screen, for anybody who joined us online for this next part of this exciting event today, David Bowie in Time. First, I wanted to say thanks to John and the events team for inviting me to introduce the next panel and also for giving me the opportunity to briefly highlight an area of the British Library collections that might be of interest to some of you here today. My name is Karoline Engelhardt and I'm the popular music curator at the British Library Sound Archive, where we hold one of the largest collections of recorded sound in the world. Our collection currently consists of close to 7 million recordings on over 40 different analog and digital recording formats. We cover all areas of music, spoken word, wildlife, and environmental sounds. Our popular music collections span across all genres, across the entire history of recorded sound, from early 20th century ragtime on cylinder records to, for example, the new David Bowie box set, I Can't Give Everything Away, 2002 till 2016. That was released just a few months ago. We collect commercially released items as well as unpublished and often unique recordings and work directly with record labels and independent artists to ensure that we archive a comprehensive representation of the UK music scene and industry. Our mission is the long-term preservation of recordings for research and enjoyment. This is a race against time that our preservation team and sound engineers face on a daily basis, not only because of the degradation of audio carriers, but also because of the gradual disappearance of the means to play them back. At the Sound Archive, we are very much aware that every recording lost forever is essentially a story erased from history. By digitally preserving our collection items, we ensure that they can be accessed not only today, but for generations to come. In my line of work, you spend a lot of time thinking about legacy, which feels especially relevant today at an event dedicated to one of the most influential figures in UK popular music history. Seeing the brilliant work earlier that our colleagues at the V&A are doing with the David Bowie archive really demonstrates how important preservation is, and to make sure Bowie's archive will transcend time just like his art did. Which leads us to our next panel of the day, Zeitlos, Bowie in Berlin. I'm pleased to welcome to the stage our speakers, all residents of Berlin, Blixa Bargeld, Gudrun and Mark Reeder, and host Arsalan Mohammad.
Thank you. Are we all in the right place?
I hope so.
Yes. This was preordained exactly where we sit, which I trust will appeal to my German friends here, who like everything to be exact and well organised. But thank you all for being here. Thank you all for sticking with us during the day. It's lovely to be here with you, and I'm particularly excited to be doing this talk today in London about a city that I've grown to love and means a lot to me, and where I live, Berlin. And it's crazy because I moved to Berlin because I love David Bowie so much, and I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it. But of course, it's very different if you are an international rock star to if you're just a bloke who moved to Berlin. But anyway, we'll skip past that. So what I'm going to do, I need the little zapper thing. I'm going to briefly introduce the panel to you. They are each, in their way, bringing a different perspective to a discussion about Bowie in Berlin. They're each going to be providing their view on why this man came to Germany at that time. What was Germany, well, what was West Berlin like at that time? Obviously, it was a very different place to what it is now. And what was how did he impact the city when he came? So we will start, as you can see, with Bowie standing there. That's at the Neues how do I say it correctly?
Neue Wache.
Neue Wache, danke dir.
Ostberlin.
Ostberlin. This was East Berlin. So if I just press this, okay, if I press the button, there we go. With our first guest, Mr. Blixa Bargeld. And Blixa, I'm sure many of you know Blixa. Blixa is the founder of Einstürzen Neubauten, who did their first gig. Was it in June 1980?
No, 1st of April 1980.
April 1980.
Gudrun was there too.
You were there, okay.
Gudrun was part.
I played with them at that gig.
And this was quite a sort of loud, sort of smashing. I mean, Einstürzen Neubauten means collapsing buildings.
That gig, 1st of April 1980. It was in a small discotheque where somebody was asked to make programming for the discotheque, and he asked me if I would like to play there and what it should be advertised as, and I spontaneously said Einstürzen Neubauten, and then I tried to sum up a couple of my friends and turn it into a band. Gudrun was playing synthesizer.
Oh, you were playing synthesizer?
I played the cork. Yeah, like and there were movies. We had Super 8 movies projected.
Yeah, we had Super 8 movies projected. I was singing, playing guitar, and Andrew was playing drums, normal drums. Normal drums, and Beate Bartel.
That changed later,
played
didn't
bass.
it?
That changed later.
Yeah.
We sold the drums to pay rent. And
What was he using after that then for drums?
there was a kind of a thing that looked like a bass drum, which was metal and said, "Sei schlau, klau beim Bau," which means be clever, steal from the building sites.
Right.
Which is pretty.
Okay. So as you can see,
to get to David Bowie in Berlin, in the time before I transitioned to become a musician, or when I was just starting to get involved with music around like 77 or something. So I lived on Langenscheidstraße. So Langenscheidstraße is here, like 50 meters to there in the corner. That's where Hauptstraße starts, and this is where David Bowie lived. That's about 300 meters from my house.
so you really were neighbors.
Yeah. And in between there was a cafe, which was the first openly gay daytime cafe called Anderes Ufer, which was basically a point where I've met David Bowie several times, I met Iggy Pop several times, and if he didn't go inside the cafe, we were all, pressing our noses on the glass and just watching him walking by.
You know what's lovely is that Bowie would always talk about, oh, I love Berlin, no one recognizes me, I can just walk around. And then he walks past and you lot are like,
Come on.
look, there he is.
A daytime gay cafe, yes.
Yeah.
But apart
All right,
from
fair
that,
enough.
he could actually take the subway or anything.
Yeah.
Nothing happened, yeah.
And imagine that, I mean, we'll come to this in a moment, but imagine the contrast between living what he described as a greeny grey limelight in LA, which is a horrible existence, to then Schöneberg.
Yeah.
This was quite the difference, wasn't it?
West Berlin and Schöneberg is no exemption from that. Was quite a grim place.
It was quite grim.
It was quite grim. Most of the flats had even if they're bigger than a flat in London, you were heating with coal.
Okay, so it's
And some of them did have the toilet on the outside and the staircase.
The famous Berlin Außentoilette that was on the stairway.
It was pretty grim.
Yeah.
When David Bowie was getting fed up with Iggy living in his apartment, he got a small apartment for Iggy in the back of the house, in the Hinterhaus, and that was coal heating.
Did you went there, didn't you?
No, I never went there, but I know it. I know it was. He told me.
Yeah.
So that was coal heating, and I very often saw Iggy and his girlfriend Esther on the street.
Yeah.
Even when they were going to the supermarket, like crossing the road like that. And so I have not. I can't remember having talked very often to David Bowie. I remember one time Iggy and David Bowie came to this cafe, Anderes Ufer, and they told me that they just come from a recording session with, you never guess that, Tangerine Dream.
With Tangerine Dream.
with Klaus Schulze on drums. That must be somewhere in the vaults of Tangerine.
I've never heard of this.
Nobody ever heard of that.
Do you think they just had a really good night out and imagined that they'd been...
I think it might have
Check
not
the
been worth
archives.
being released. So.
Okay, it might not be released. Okay.
I think Iggy was singing, Klaus Schulze was playing drums, and then, of course, Edgar Froese and all the electronics and all the synthesizers and all that.
Well, Edgar Froese had basically opened up Berlin for those guys, hasn't he? He was there.
I don't know. I've never been really a big fan of the Berlin school of electronics. I was same as David Bowie, or I was more for Cologne, Düsseldorf.
Yeah. Okay.
Neu and Cannes.
Edgar found Bowie the flat in the Hauptstrasse.
Okay. So
Right.
Edgar Froese found that flat.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to quickly show you all this. This is one of the reasons that Blixa is joining us today. Blixa is going to be singing later on a couple of tracks. Yes, come on. Blixa is going to be singing a couple of tracks later on. Where Are We Now?
Yeah,
Lazarus.
well, I chosen tracks that I thought would like fit also in this like kind of Berlin story in a way, because it is Helden, heroes.
Yes.
Followed by Where Are We Now, which is a reflection on that again, and then end with Lazarus.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to be later on, but for now, I just want to quickly move on, and I wonder if you recognize this. This is, now according to one of the guys on the door, this is my mother.
Yeah.
I came in with Gudrun earlier, and this bloke says, "Is that your mum?" So, I'm so sorry, but Gudrun.
I'm happy to be your mother.
Mummy.
I don't have children, so
Okay.
finally, here he
Mummy,
is.
I've been looking for you for so long. Gudrun came to Berlin in the mid-70s. You said it was quite a conservative upbringing that you had, and then you came to Berlin to study art.
No, it was just in general. I came from West Germany.
Yeah.
And West Germany in general was very kind of boring. Everything was really nicely organized, and you know, it was a generation after the war where they wanted everything nice, no problems, you know.
Yeah.
And that was, for a young girl, was a bit boring. And then I had a friend who took me to Berlin when I was 16, I think, and I thought, wow, this is great. I want to go there. And then on my 18th birthday, I moved to Berlin.
And that was to study art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First, yeah.
And we actually met not much after that.
Not much after, like 77 or 78.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So we know each other
how
quite
did you
long.
first meet?
I think same thing again. I think I met you
At
for
the
the first time at the
Anders
Anders
Sofa,
Sofa.
yeah.
Oh, you were hanging out at the Anders.
Yeah. I was hanging, sure.
Everyone was there.
Yeah, because it was really cool that finally Berlin was, compared to London, very political.
Yeah.
So, you know, the gender stuff was discussed. And then there finally was a gay
Openly
cafe.
gay daytime.
You know, it's like
Yeah,
open,
that was good, it was good,
open
yeah.
gayness. You know, we loved this idea. And we heard that David Bowie was coming.
That was the other thing. You told me that you were a big David Bowie fan.
I was super David Bowie fan. I loved the Ziggy Stardust
I mean,
stuff.
David Bowie back at that time, he was one step away from divinity.
Right.
But only for us. I mean,
But,
he wasn't.
no.
He wasn't
it was,
so.
I mean, there was so much that they named a whole giant disco Bowie.
Right, they did, yeah.
Then?
Remember, Brandenburgische Straße?
Yeah.
The disco was named Bowie.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
So Gudrun had come to Berlin. She had met Blixa at the Neuse Ufer, which clearly was a hangout. It was a great
Or
place.
at the Tali, because he used to work for cinema.
Yeah.
I used to work for cinema, yeah.
Yeah, and then I went there because I had the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and they were throwing rice.
What were you doing at the cinema?
Sorry?
Were you
Everything.
Everything. Were you the projectionist or
It
the
was a collective.
a collective?
Yeah, like you know, Berlin was very left-wing, kind of
Yeah.
lots of students, people who didn't want to go to the army,
Right.
and no business,
That was a
you know,
big attraction of
pensionists,
West Berlin.
and no businessmen. The first businessman I saw was in New York, I think.
Really?
Like really, I thought, wow, they really wear a tie.
I read a quote from Iggy where he was raving about when shortly after he moved to Berlin, he was raving about it. And he was saying it was a city that was originally designed for so many people, but by now, in the late 70s, there was hardly anyone there.
Yeah.
The city was almost empty. So that's one
Yeah,
thing
lots
Iggy-
of empty houses.
Yes, exactly.
Like, you know, where the Hansa was?
Yeah.
Because I went to the Hansa.
Lots of...
There was nothing.
Yeah, it still looked like the war just ended.
Yeah, there was just nothing. There was just the pizzeria, the pizza place.
Yeah.
And
No,
then
yeah, that was downstairs from the Hansa, yeah.
Yeah, genau. And then I went there like a
The
month.
house Vaterland was across some piece of wasteland, but they put it down somewhere in the 60s.
Right.
It was still in complete ruin.
Well, yeah, Hansa Studios was basically in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
there was a wall right there.
Because everything else was
and
bombed away,
all
so it
around
was
the
only
wall was kind of not, nobody, because the situation was unclear.
Right.
The city was divided. We had the French, American, and English kind of sectoren.
Yeah.
And so we had BFGS.
So this was the American sector?
That was the American sector. And, you know, so nobody wanted really to invest something. So the bullet holes were still everywhere in the houses. You know, no gentrification at all, which was kind of nice.
I found that fascinating.
Well,
It was fascinating.
Gudrun-
It was a big, like, you could do what you want.
that's something, again, that Bowie would talk about a lot, is
Yeah.
the sense of freedom that he had. And he said that for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely, completely free. And I felt joy
too.
in that. And you felt that as well.
Yeah.
But it was a very unique environment to be in. You were encircled by this wall.
But you got used to it.
It's like an island.
Yeah.
It was an island mentality.
Like-
You were
I mean,
Like
the
UK.
wall wall in
Okay, well, let's...
yeah,
Moving on.
but
Moving on. So, Gudrun
in our daily thoughts, the wall did not really play any role at all.
Gudrun went
your-
on
your
to
life.
found an all-girl punk band, Malaria, who, if you haven't heard any Malaria, they are fantastic.
That was Mania D first.
First
Mania D, then Malaria, and this was Malaria. I know you know, super cool.
I hate that picture.
I know you do. But they were terrific. They were absolutely terrific. This was one of their early records. And around this time, they got to know a young English guy who was crazy enough to have moved to Berlin in September '78. I mean, like these guys are saying, there wasn't really very much happening in Berlin, but a former employee of Virgin Records in Manchester had decided to go record shopping in Germany, and he hitchhiked over and ended up here. What? Okay, tell us about this photo first.
That was taken to go into Czechoslovakia.
That you thought they would let you in?
Oh, that's what I look like, you know. They let me in, yeah.
So you had this fantastic backstory in the fact that when you come from Manchester, you were working in Virgin Records, and one of your closest friends at the time was a bloke called Ian Curtis,
Yeah.
who was playing with Joy Division.
Yeah.
And they were all, of course, huge Bowie fans. And when Bowie went to Berlin, what was the reaction amongst your mates? You know, why is he going there? Or we know there's something happening in Germany? Or what was?
No, we had no idea. I mean, well, I listened to krautrock music, so I had a bit of an idea that there's an alternative musical sound somehow, you know. But Bowie going to Berlin was like, oh, why has he gone there?
Yeah.
It was like it was the revelation of him going to Berlin was something which was kind of like because we didn't know anything about Berlin at all really. We knew that the war had ended there, but most people didn't know that there was a music scene even really. You know, they didn't realise that Tangerine Dream's first records were made in one small studio, you know, with one synthesizer. They had no idea. For them, it was like Berlin was a very political city. It was where East versus West. It was where the Third World War was going to start. You know, Berlin.
So there's all this tension.
It was all about politics and not really about music. And you know, Bowie going to Berlin was like, wow, what is there? And it was kind of intriguing. You know, he came back with this fucking fantastic record called Low, and it was like, wow. You know, it sounded like the records that I've been buying since 1972.
Yeah.
When did you come to Berlin?
In 78.
78. Okay.
And it was this sound of like early Tangerine Dream records or whatever and stuff that was kind of, I could hear it coming out of this record. It was like, wow, it'd obviously been influenced by this sound. And I was like, oh, I'll go there, you know. And so I went. And I had a few attempts before.
You had a few attempts?
I was hitchhiking around West Germany, but nobody in West Germany was going to Berlin. Right? They were going to Dusseldorf or Hamburg or Cologne. They weren't going to Berlin. Nobody went to Berlin. And it was like people would say, well, what do you want to go there for? It's like, it must be interesting. I thought, if nobody goes there, there's probably loads of records that nobody buys. I'll go to Berlin. And eventually managed to hitchhike to Berlin. And it was like going through a time tunnel from West Germany into this darkness of the DDR transit. And then you see this glowing place on the horizon. That was West Berlin. And we arrived there and had no idea what to expect from West Berlin. The only thing that I knew about West Berlin was things like the spy who came in from the cold, or you know, the funeral in Berlin or something like that. That's all I really knew about Berlin.
So you had that very cliched view that a lot of Brits had at the time.
A foreign affair, Billy Wilder. You know, that's all I really knew about.
This is what Francis was saying this morning, actually, before we came on, was that his view of Berlin, you know, during the 70s had been shaped through things like, you know, Michael Caine, Funeral in Berlin. You know, Berlin had this very distinct identity for British.
It was all political.
Yeah.
It was this political place. And he came to me, I was expecting, you know, like, I'd just come from Manchester, which was in the throes of like the punk rock era. You know, it's like you know, punk rock had been basically born in Manchester, and I thought that they'd sold the soul with Sampan Pomoir from Plastic Bertrand.
that was it. That's when punk finished with Plastic Bertrand.
I got to meet, I met Bertrand later on, but at the time it was like I thought punk had sold its soul, and I was looking for something else. And looking towards Berlin as being sort of like an alternative, I just wanted to see it, really. I thought, I'll go to Berlin, I'll have a look around, see what it's like, buy some records, go to East Berlin and go home. I thought I'd be there for 4 days, I've been there for
interesting point is that as a British citizen, Mark was able to just go to East Berlin.
Yeah.
We couldn't.
Yeah, you couldn't.
Yeah,
he could.
As a West, you know, like Brit, I could just go with my passport to East Berlin and just go inside. As a Berliner, Blixa had to go to a place to get fill out a form and.
I have to form. I have to change money. I have to tell exactly where I'm going to,
who you're going to meet,
who I'm going to meet, what I'm going to do there, and then a couple of days later, I would be able to go there.
Did you ever make that journey?
I was once with my parents to go to the museum.
In East Berlin?
Yeah, that's the only time I ever been to East Berlin. The next time I was already working with Heiner Müller and had an invitation from the Ministry of Interior of the GDR.
Yeah,
so,
okay, that's...
and shortly after that, there was no GDR.
Okay.
But most Berliners, you know, if they went to East Berlin, they would go to visit their relatives. Because, you know, bring them washing powder or something. You know. That's in West Berlin, all my friends and all the ones who come from West Germany and were living in West Berlin, I'd say, do you want to come with me to East Berlin? And be like, no, I'm not going there.
Well, I think there's a fantastic film about Mark's life in 1980s Germany, and I think it's on Amazon. You can watch. It's called B-Movie.
It's not available in the UK.
Oh, it's not. Sorry, it's not available in the UK.
It's not available.
It's not available.
But in that film, you quite memorably describe East Berlin as Disneyland for depressives.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when we've all seen that footage of East Germany, and it is just grey and horrendous and awful. I just quickly want to pull it back to this. So this is Mark on the Tube, isn't it? So this was in 1984. So Mark, you became a bit of a kind of ambassador for British musicians and bands visiting Germany, and one of those, of course, was Joy Division, who you put on a gig by Joy Division at the Kant Kino in January 1980. It wasn't.
Well, I thought everyone would love Joy Division. I thought it's like their music is dark enough, and I thought all the people in Kreuzberg would be fascinated by this sound. And I talked the guy who ran the Kant Kino, Connie Konchak, I talked him into putting on Joy Division. He was really sceptical about it, really. And he
but Kant Kino was the place where the bands played.
Kant Kino was the venue,
yeah. And I thought, because a lot of bands played there, he would be interested enough, and he was like, I never heard of him. and then they released Unknown Pleasures, and they were in the NME. And there was quite a positive write-up, I think, by Paul Morley, if I'm not mistaken. And it was like, immediately, it was like, wow, they were in the NME. I could show that to Connie. It's not got a really good write-up. He said, oh, yeah, sounds good. And I gave him a record, of course, and then it was like, okay, we'll try it out. 58 people came.
Because we did read...
58 people.
I was
Yeah.
devastated. I was devastated.
But we did read the Melody Maker
NME.
and NME.
You didn't.
We did.
You did.
Yeah.
Gudrun worked in a record shop
Yes, I'm going to come to this.
called
because-
Zenzo.
Yeah.
And that's like, you know, I'd go, like Rob Gretton would send me copies of like their latest single, whatever, and it was like, first of all, the 12-inch and Ideal for Living, I'd give it around, send to radio stations, and in the hope that people would play it on the radio, and nothing. Of course.
Didn't really fly, did it?
Nobody
Yeah.
was interested at all.
It's kind of nuts when you think about it now.
And Gudrun worked in a record shop and was trying to like give her like copies of like, you know, the records and hope that she'd sell them in the shop. Whatever.
Well, Gudrun is also in Mark's film complaining at the time that everything is about Joy Division. It's all about Joy Division. There are lots of other bands here.
Well, it was only after he died. But it was,
I'm in it too, but I've never seen the film.
You've never seen it? you are in it because
I'm
you,
always just getting invited with Mark. They show his film, and then I come later and talk on a panel.
well, with Mark, we did an episode of the podcast actually in Hansa Studios. And so we went into Hansa Studios, and Thilo Schmidt, who runs the Berlin Music Tours, kindly let us in and showed us around. So as you can see there is Mark today, or relatively recent to today, in Hansa. So I want to move it along slightly and just bring us to when Bowie came to Berlin. So I found quite a nice picture which indicates what Bowie's frame of mind was like when he was living in LA before he moved to Germany. I think that says it all, right?
yeah.
I think we all know his situation in Los Angeles. He was not having a good time, personally collapsing. He was doing exorcisms of his swimming pool and finding Satan. He was really close to full burnout, full collapse. He had come up with another amazing album, and it was touring this album that Iggy joined him, and they stop off in Berlin for a visit. In springtime of '76, they check out a few clubs, they see a few places, and they decide to move to Berlin. Now, we've been hearing a little bit about what Berlin was like at the time. Clearly, it was not a place where anybody, not least a celebrity, who had all the trappings that a wealthy LA celebrity could have.
Yeah, it was a heroin capital.
It was a heroin capital as well, so Iggy decided to try and kick heroin. And moved to Berlin. Bowie also thought, it's time to get clean.
Cocaine back then was 250 German marks a gram.
So what would that be in?
250 euros.
Right.
And it was really...
No, that's not 250 euros.
Doch,
It's more
you can say things like that nowadays.
Okay.
But
the original...
But the quality was much worse than...
Worse?
It was, first of all, very, very hard to get.
Cocaine.
Very hard to get.
Yeah, and the quality was really, really bad compared with what you buy today for like 50 euros a gram. And I can say these things now because all the people I'm talking about in this case are dead. The tape assistant at the Hansa studio, Christian Wolf, is dead, doesn't it? Christian Wolf was the little brother of our coke dealer. So I know how bad the coke was that was around.
What David and
aspirin,
what they were doing.
Absolutely terrible stuff.
Terrible stuff.
Yeah, terrible stuff. But
Probably that's why
I knew
we kicked
I
the
knew what
habit.
they were.
Well, that probably would have helped.
It would have helped, like, this is really rubbish, what am I doing,
But a big part, so David and Iggy move, as we all know, to Hauptstrasse 155. And a big...
Nowadays, the big plaque outside.
Well, it's not that big.
Yeah. David Bowie lived here.
Yeah, it's not huge. I mean, I went there the day, the anniversary of his death, and I expected there to be, millions of people and stuff. And it's the local gas board that has put the plaque up. Gasag.
Yeah, they would put it up.
The Gasag has put the plaque up. It's like, British Gas putting a plaque up to some. Well, it's nice. I'm not saying it's not nice. But they moved
Bowie
to
was
this
a
flat.
gas.
And,
Bowie was a gas.
Very good. Yeah, Bowie was a gas. But he moves to Hauptstrasse 155, and there begins one of I think if you've heard Francis Whately's fantastic Radio 4 documentary about Bowie in Berlin, he rather drolly describes it as one of the most legendary flat shares in history. It's a crazy scenario, like you're saying. There's, Bowie's trying to reassemble himself from the complete psychic, mental, physical collapse of Los Angeles, and Iggy had come out of the UCLA psychiatric hospital, and the Stooges were over. He realized that he really was in the last chance saloon. He had to do something, but then against the odds, they begin recording.
Yeah.
So what did you make of that? I mean, you heard The Idiot, you heard Low. What were your thoughts when you heard these albums?
Well, I absolutely loved Low, and especially the B-side. And it was within the circles that I was living, etc. It was one of the most played records.
Really?
And I can tell you also that Low and Heroes, and especially the second, the B-side of Heroes, was hated by the German music press.
Yeah, but the German music press didn't.
Yeah, even. But that just shows what, in the same time as being like, a superstar, it was also elitarian what he was doing at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. But I remember.
Sorry, but you were saying you remember.
I remember the day I bought the record.
Which one? Low?
Low. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't go to university, because I knew Mondays, I think it was, the records came out. And I was like skipping university and going to the shop, getting the new David Bowie album. And I was just like, wow, I loved it. It was fantastic. It was at Europa Center.
Are you Boot und Bock or?
City Music, I think.
No, it's Boot und Bock back then.
Yeah, but then later City Music.
Did you have much idea what was on the record? I mean, Sound and Vision would have been out. Or did you just not have any idea how this album would sound?
No, because there was no single before. Was there a single before?
Yeah, but why I said that about music press, etc., is rather they were pissed off that he, as a rock star, doesn't fulfill their ideas about what kind of music he should make.
What do you think they thought he should make?
Right, they could, Sound and Vision, okay, you can do that, but then the B-side, that's... They were pissed off.
It was too Germanic.
What German music press?
Now, what I refer to, not so much music press, I heard SF Beat, Senderfreies Berlin, and she was ranting about the B-side of Heroes and how much of a rip-off it is.
I don't agree.
There's this one song, okay.
And I think we all don't agree.
But this happened a lot, though. A lot of critics, and not just in Germany, but there was, I think, a famous review in the NME of Low. I think it was Charles Shaw Murray who wrote it, and it was absolutely... brutal.
It wasn't just German.
It wasn't just German.
No, it wasn't.
But when you bought that record, I mean, you'd come to Berlin, you were an art student, you weren't a musician yet, were you, at that point?
Transitioning,
okay.
Yeah,
but how did that abrupt change in Bowie's style and working process, how did that hit you? I mean, what are your memories?
I was very open for a surprise, because I thought all the records had a different kind of style, and Bowie was celebrating that, station to station, one step up, he was always doing different things you didn't expect.
Reinventing himself.
This idea of,
it's like, what's he going to do next?
Well, this is
so for me it was like, I was just really happy to listen to it, to have the record. I'm trying to say that in those days, there was a day when a record was released and you were happy with this album. But because nowadays this is gone.
It was an occasion.
It's a click.
And he did it again with the last album when he didn't announce it. Like he went back like how it used to be, because it was a celebration when a new record came out. And I really loved this idea to release an album without
promotion,
pre-promotion, just because he was David Bowie, he could do it. He said, today the album is coming out. And everybody like, what the fuck? It was
Shocked everyone.
great. Fantastic idea. And they all picked up on it. You know, it worked.
Yeah.
It
But
was really nice.
I was really interested because you said, you know, you have such a clear memory of buying Low. Mark, when Bowie made Low, a lot has been made of his obsession with Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
And leading up to the making of Low, he clearly was immersed in that. But then the interesting thing is that when you look at Kraftwerk and you look at Low and Heroes, there's actually they're quite polar opposites in the way that they've been made. I just wonder if you'd sort of, I know you're a big Kraftwerk head as well, but, you know, how, if at all, do you think he appropriated their working practices
I
and
just
techniques?
think that, having been listening to Kraftwerk and Neu, people like that and stuff, you know.
No.
You know, it's like Einstein's novel. You know, I think he was really, really impressed by what they were doing, and he wanted to have a bit of that action, really. And I think Tony can say, you know, like that was an inspiration to do something that wasn't just making a song, but making a piece of art.
Yeah.
And that's what made it really a separate thing. You know, everyone was used to hearing David Bowie's voice in every single track, and suddenly here he is, just being a musician and presenting something which I thought, being a krautrock fan, I was completely just obsessed by this record. Yeah, Low. It was just like, I don't believe it, you know. What a fabulous record. And when Heroes came out, we actually had a white label of Heroes, which we could play in the shop a week before. and it was like, who's going to get the white label in the shop? And
Did you get it?
We all had to draw straws, did I fuck?
Do you know who got it?
Yeah, one of the girls who worked there, I was like, you don't really like this record. You don't really like me. I want this record. She's like, it's mine. So she got the white label, and I had to get the finished copy. But it was like, Heroes was just like another revelation. It was like, especially also having instrumental tracks on it. You know?
Yeah.
And especially like, Sense of Doubt was like, what is that? It just kind of conjured up this atmosphere that I had no idea about until I actually went to Berlin and then realised that's what he's musically portraying is West Berlin at that moment in time in an audio sense. And for me, that's the track that kind of like, I see the dingy streets of gaslit streets of West Berlin in bullet-riddled buildings and
It's
stuff.
the same year. Low and Heroes was released the same year.
They were in the same year. Yeah.
Oh,
Low was January.
One came out at the beginning, one came out.
Yeah.
wow. It's kind of pretty productive.
It's like,
But do you get the same sense that Mark is talking about when you listen to it? Because Bowie was somebody that really absorbed his environment. You know,
No,
it
there's
filtered
also,
through.
there's not just Berlin, it's also the Eastern Bloc,
Eastern Bloc.
Warschau.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in there too. There's the famous train travel, Iggy and David Bowie going through Poland and all that. And of course, that's even more bleak
I mean, you see the
in
station
Britain
at
than West
Warsaw.
Berlin.
Yeah.
You know, the railway station at Warsaw is it's like brutalist architecture on steroids. Yeah, there's this massive thing, and the trains don't actually, they go underground. So you get into this kind of like underworld, subterranean world of the station, where this kind of like life is happening. Polish, you know, people going to work and catching the trains. And it was like a real hive. And I can imagine, because I've been there and seen it for myself, when I went there, I realised what he'd written there in the music, where it's coming from. It was kind of a real revelation.
And of course,
I think for us, for me, it was really great that Bowie was in Berlin, because Berlin wasn't seen before,
As a
you know,
musical city.
as a music place. And suddenly, you know,
Berlin has a kind of a minority complex, the West Berlin minority complex. And whoever would make it to Berlin, they were...
Germany too, and David Bowie mentioned Neu and the German krautrock stuff, and like we were like, wow, it's, you know, it's worth something, because the music industry was only England and America. You know, Germany was just...
And another band who everybody knows, but they don't really have any idea that it's also a Berlin concept, was Boney M.
Come on.
Daddy Cool was recorded in the Wittelsbacher Straße 18. Yeah? And upstairs in the roof.
Daddy
Frank
Cool was
Farian.
recorded in Berlin.
in a small studio in the Wittelsbacher Straße.
Really?
In Berlin, yeah.
And it was like you had Neu and you had Tangerine Dream, if you like, and stuff like that, and then you had Boney M. So, but nobody knew Boney M were from Berlin because they didn't promote it as such. It was like a West German thing.
You're fully correct, Mark.
Yeah, and to see that.
Boney M looked too glam to come from Berlin, though. Boney M were all spangles and frou-frou.
Remember what came out of Boney M? I mean, Boney M was Frank Farian, the producer.
Yeah.
They did all the voices except for the one woman in the band. The others were just dancing and all that. And the later version of that is Milli Vanilli.
Of course, Milli Vanilli. Yeah, exactly. So we have from krautrock to Milli Vanilli. I did not think that was going to happen.
Revelation.
Today.
Now, you can look at Kraftwerk and the vocoder and the artificial voices, and then look at Milli Vanilli. There is not that much of a. You hear a voice, but it's not the voice.
It's not the voice. I mean, we would think of maybe Giorgio Moroder or someone, for example, who pioneered.
Giorgio Moroder was from Südtirol. No, but he also worked in Berlin. But yeah, he worked in Berlin. That's not the point.
Thank you. Yes. You see, he worked. But I mean, just to go back to the Warsaw station. It was here that he was picked up for. He had some Nazi paraphernalia or books. Or
when he was crossing the border.
When he was crossing the border.
East Germany.
And I was just wondering, I mean, obviously the year before in London, there was a very controversial moment where he'd come into Victoria Station giving what the press described as being a Nazi salute. But, he's always maintained that wasn't the case. But he's been very honest about the fact that he did, during his more psychotic moments, find himself, reading a lot about the Nazi era. I'm just wondering, how did that play to you as German Bowie fans? Was there a sense of discomfort at his, sort of morbid curiosity in this period, or was it just irrelevant and seen as part of the punk context?
It was. I think it would put it more in the punk context, and I think he just wanted, but you could see the past. You could see the Nazi stuff still, and. So to get a little bit of information about it is totally okay. And then we have Duff, who did the song Tanzt den Mussolini and stuff. It was at that time, because nobody talked about it, to put it on the table a little bit.
I think he was kind of fascinated not just by the Nazi thing. I think it was about the whole mindset, really, of like what Germans were about.
Boys.
You had the 20s. He was fascinated with this 20s imagery, as well as like the 30s. The Weimar Republic was something which was really inspiring, I think, for him. And I think he was really connected to that, and the fact that the Nazis had come and spit in the soup, really. And I think that was something which he thought he liked the artistic element, if you like, of like how they presented themselves, the kind of media spectacle, if you like, being able to reach lots of people. He was desperate for some success of some sort, and he liked that idea that you could reach a lot of people by some certain imagery or whatever. I never thought that it ever, even though seeing this picture, I saw it in the papers of Bowie like supposedly doing a Nazi salute, and I remember thinking like it's just the media just grabbing anything they can that's negative.
But this is not Germany. Also exactly before he moved to Berlin.
Before he moved to Berlin.
And
I thought the media just wanted to like lash it on there that Bowie's a Nazi, and the fact that he'd done it in Germany. Remember, Germany was the enemy still in 1976. They were still the enemy. When I went to Germany, I couldn't tell my mum and dad that I'd gone to Germany. Oh, that was going.
Oh, really?
It was only when I came back.
Did they wonder where you'd gone?
And they were horrified. And all our next door neighbours, they were like, "Oh, you went to Germany." It was like,
"Oh, really?"
I was contaminated. But the next door neighbour, "You're a traitor."
But that is very true, and that adds a dimension to Bowie's decision to decamp to Germany, given it came freighted. Today, no one would think twice about a musician moving to Germany. In fact, many do. Yes, but then, Mark saying in a British context, to make a conscious decision to move to Germany when there was that generation still there. So that's why he very, very emphatically explained that when I moved to Berlin, any fascination I had with Nazi iconography or with their, sense of mass communication was pretty quickly disabused. I spoke to Germans. I figured it out. But it was intriguing to me how that would have played with your groups of friends, sort of simultaneously valuing and appreciating Bowie and then being confronted with this iconography. But I think you've explained it very clearly.
For me, it didn't really, it never occurred, really. I probably read the story about that was before he moved to Berlin. And just from my daily life situation, and never occurred to me that there's anything to do with Nazi ideology.
But it was quite fascinating to see, like he'd gone to Berlin, he'd gone to Germany and made a record there that was like so outstanding. It was like, for me, it was like, what's there?
Yeah.
What do we not know about? What are they not telling us for? There was no information whatsoever, and so I was curious to find out. So I just went.
It's funny what you say about Heroes being such a Berlin album when you consider it was an Englishman flying in from Los Angeles. There was an American producer. There was a band coming from the States. There was, Robert Fripp flying over from the UK and flying back. In other words, it was an album created by and large by foreigners all coming into Berlin and all working in this most Germanic of atmospheres. And I think that's what gives it a certain degree of tension and a certain degree of otherness. It wasn't a record created by German musicians in Germany. It was people all coming in to do this. And I was just wondering, I'm going to move to wrap it up shortly, but I was just wondering, how do you think Bowie left an impact on the music? So both of you went on to have music careers in the 1980s. In the immediate aftermath of David Bowie in Berlin, how did you feel his impact?
One of the things that he actually put Hansa Studios on the landscape.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Berlin as a musical city.
Yeah.
It transformed it. Yeah,
that studio was, this was already in the 20s. It was a concert hall and
This is the studio, by the way. When
there's not just one. There's one is on the top studio, and one is in the middle.
Where's a pizza place?
They had several studios in there.
Yeah.
There's a pizzeria too. But the Hansa studio was in the 60s. Schlock music production factory. Yeah. Funny enough, you wouldn't believe it, I had lunch once with Jimmy Page.
That says all you need to know.
In the British embassy. And he told me how he was first flying into Berlin, Tempelhof Airport, propeller machine, and was then carried to Hansa Studio to make a record with Katharina Valente. See, there you go. Exactly.
Well, he was a very prolific session musician.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was playing with everyone.
That's why they flew him to Berlin to make a record with Katharina Valente. And that's in the 60s. The Hansa Studio wasn't really in the landscape. It wasn't so that they are like a German band or a Berlin band even saying, we're going to Hansa Studio to record. It didn't exist. We didn't really know.
It was a cheap studio.
Yeah.
So you think he really put Berlin on the map?
Yeah.
You put the Hansa Studio on the map. That's what I said.
But
that was
the Hansa Studio.
Well.
Yeah. We all had the pleasure to record at Hansa Studio at some point later. But
because David Bowie recorded
David Bowie.
And we wanted the same engineer.
And then you too recorded there.
Yeah, and then
because David Bowie recorded there.
Most like you two did the best record.
But they just rented the whole building, all the studios, and because David Bowie recorded.
But it's like say for example bands that would go to Abbey Road after the Beatles and just want that Abbey Road sound.
Exactly.
You can't do that.
Exactly. The same kind of effect. As I said, like the building is old. It used to be a concert hall. In the second floor, the concert hall, which later became Studio 2 in Hansa. And in the times that we were recording there, they had 4 studios in the building. But it only became the
a big
famous
rumor, so-
Hansa by the Wall after
Bowie. Yeah.
made some
The
records.
Hall by the Wall, as Bowie called it.
The Hall by the Wall. Well, this is
Hauptstraße.
This is Hauptstraße. This is Bowie's house.
Yeah, there's Andres Ufer. Huh?
Genau.
Nee, but a little bit further.
Just down there.
A little bit further to the left.
And then this is in this actual studio itself.
Ja.
So,
Yes.
Brian Eno.
yeah.
That's
Tony.
the upstairs, the Studio 4 upstairs.
Okay. It looks like a lot of fun is being had there.
That must have been during
Yeah,
the day.
you know, the older brother of, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I think what I'd like to do is invite the audience now to put your questions to Gudrun, to Mark, to
There's a young lady over
Blixa.
there.
So, yeah, if anybody wants to ask a question.
There's a young
raise-
lady over there.
Okay, please. Do we have microphones anywhere?
No, you have to
Oh,
shout.
it's coming, it's coming.
Coming, it's coming.
Okay, good.
There we go.
Hello, thank you so much for the opportunity. I've got a question for Herr Bargeld. As David Bowie was releasing Let's Dance, which was, let's say, his transition to big commercial venues and commercialized music and video clips, you were releasing Zeitlos and des Patienten OT 1983. I can't think of two albums being further related from each other. How, at that point, when you were, let's say, starting to establish yourself with Neubauten with these kind of works, was Bowie musically or mentally still a factor of influence in your art?
I mean, influences are hard to measure. I don't think that I ever consciously listened to the Let's Dance album, ever. So it certainly wasn't around in my mindset at the time. While these other records that we talked for, like the Berlin, they never really left me. But I think there is what is more common in the department of influences is that that I have some similar influences than David Bowie had too. Mainly if you talk about the German music of the time, the Krautrock, the Deutschrock, and all that. So yeah, as I said earlier, the Berlin electronica wasn't really my thing, but Düsseldorf and Cologne and Cannes and that was always very, very important to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question? A gentleman over there, hand in the air. If you keep your hand, okay, got it.
Thank you so much. So one of the records I was most proud of owning back in the day was the soundtrack to Christiane F., which has the full German version of Helden, so that the German translation of Heroes by Antonia Maas. So I'm fascinated by that. Did Bowie speak any German apart from in recording that song? And if not, how integrated was he in German society beyond the obvious, the music scene and the scene you've described?
Ein Kaffee.
No, to me either.
Ein Kaffee.
Never
Ein
spoke
Bier,
to me
bitte.
anyway.
Sprechen
But
Sie
I
English?
think, the problem was that in Germany, in West Berlin, most people didn't speak English. Look, it's not like now that you have to talk English
They
to
spoke
order
school
coffee.
English. Yeah. they spoke school English, and they all wanted to practice on me.
And so I think he had to talk, because he went to Butterlindner, and that's a very good shop. He had to talk a little bit of German to order something.
Butterlindner was a little bit to the left there.
Okay.
What
What is Butterlin?
It was
Butterlindner is
kind
so-
of like a delicatessen shop.
So he would have had to spoken German there.
Yeah, I mean, or in the bakery.
He had to point at it at least.
Yeah,
Three of those.
when I went to Germany, I only could say Hände hoch, which means put your hands up. And Achtung raus. Yeah.
So all your German are basically come from watching war movies.
From war movies, yeah. So you can't go to a bread shop and ask for bread
can't-
with those.
No,
you know, Hände hoch, Achtung raus. Yeah.
But you know, it's if you come like if you move to West Berlin, that is also maybe a separation that you want.
Definitely.
And be going to a place where you not even speak the language.
Yeah. That was a big thing for him, and he was
Yeah, definitely.
creating a new musical language while
There's
existing in the
and
space.
there's a distance that you
Yes.
automatically have.
He felt like, I mean, one of the famous quotes is about life in Los Angeles had just become too easy. He was being treated like a star. He hated it. You know, he could see himself turning into a kind of glittering, bloated Rod Stewart-esque kind of, no disrespect to Rod Stewart, but you know what I mean. You know, so take yourself out of that situation. Go into a place where you don't speak the language. As he said, you know, force
Get
yourself
real.
to buy your own groceries. You know, all that kind of stuff was very good for him. Any more questions? Lady over there in the white. I feel like Fiona.
Somebody's coming.
Something actually about his flats, because I went to Bowie's flats.
Yeah.
A friend of Bowie's was in Iggy's flat.
Thank you. It's all so interesting. But I really want to question about Berlin itself, because you've said how grim it was in the mid to late 70s. When the Berlin Wall came down, we saw a lot on TV of that. West Berlin then looked quite a glamorous place in the TV coverage. You know, very light and bright, and lots of shops and so on. Was that an illusion, or had it really changed a great deal in that sort of decade and a half?
If you grew up in Berlin like I did, I was born there. There were building sites. Always. You could always, earn a lot of money if you had a building company, because there was so much destroyed and so much that had to be rebuilt. So in the whole time since the Second World War, there was a lot of building going on. And as Mark said, these like bullet marks in the buildings slowly disappeared. And probably by the time of the end of the GDR, there were hardly any left in West Berlin. And then the wall came down, and East Berlin looked exactly like the war is over.
That's West Berlin, as it looked. The Kurfürsten Dam. That was the showcase of
Yeah.
the city, right? When I arrived in Berlin, this is what I first saw, and I thought, oh fuck, it just looks like West Germany. But luckily, I went into Schöneberg and Kreuzberg and realised it's nothing like that at all. It was all derelict.
There were still ruins left in between buildings, like
You can see where the bombs had
Winterfeldplatz and
dropped.
so.
Well, you can see here these sorts of buildings.
Like the bombs had dropped there.
Yeah. But
That's the wall.
Yeah, but that's the wall. Yeah, which we're looking into East Berlin.
East
here.
Berlin. That's East.
And then the embassies.
And that's
at
another
the
wall
Ufer,
Yeah,
they
then
were
you
empty.
had this whole old embassy area.
Yeah.
But since Bonn was the capital, all these embassies were empty.
Yeah,
They had all these
fantastic
old
old houses.
embassies standing in Tiergarten and
No man's land. That's Hitler's
No man's
bunkers
land,
there on
no,
the left.
that's
no man's land. Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Any more questions?
Can I actually have?
Oh, yes.
Since I'm already.
Okay.
Thank you, first of all, for coming to London. A couple of years ago, I went on sort of self-guided tour of Bowie places in Berlin. All the different places he lived, and Paris Bar and Neuhofer.
Yeah.
The only place what was closed, unfortunately, was this jungle place.
Yeah.
And it sounded like it was a very legendary and interesting place. So could you talk a little bit about the place and what was happening there, and maybe also what books he read, if you knew about any books he read during the Berlin period?
The jungle was a legendary nightclub, not so much. It had a dancing floor, but it wasn't very big. There was an original one.
Quite small dancing.
Yeah, quite small dancing place.
Why was it called the jungle?
It moved. It was used to be in a bar, and then they got
Slumberland?
which later became Slumberland.
At Neuendorfplatz, and
And
Iggy
then-
Pop used to go there.
Winterfeldplatz ist nicht wahr?
Yeah,
Winterfeldplatz.
genau.
Yeah, the original jungle was a kindergarten.
Blimey,
Yeah, it was a kindergarten, and they painted on the walls scenes from the Jungle Book.
Yeah.
And when it became a bar, they just left the scene pictures on the wall. That's why it was called the jungle.
I didn't know that part of it, but they later
And then they moved.
they later acquired a Chinese restaurant that is a Bauhaus building.
No, really
And
nice building.
turned that into a disco. And the disco. And what was new for Berlin is they had somebody standing at the door.
Genau.
That was new. That,
But not like the Berghain.
And it was bright.
It was pretty easy to get.
it was pretty easy,
Very
but
bright.
it was still new for Berlin. We always thought, you go somewhere, you open the door, you walk inside.
Yeah.
So,
But now you had a doorman.
yeah, and then they had a
But
doorman.
clearly this place held a lot of memories for Bowie. I mean, as we know in Where Are We Now, sitting in the jungle.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a great thing to bring up. The second part of your question, you were asking about books, and if we had much more time, I wish we could have got into this, because obviously he was reading books during this time. Mark, do you know anything about the kind of books that he might be?
I didn't see any books when I went to his flat. I didn't look for his books.
Oh,
I went to see if he had a record collection. No, a friend was staying in Iggy's flat, and he asked me if I wanted to come over to Bowie's flat because he had to water some plants, or a plant.
Was that a euphemism?
No, he really did have to go and water the plants.
Really
Bowie wasn't there, he was in Switzerland.
Oh, okay.
He was in Switzerland. Right. And so I went with him and to have a look. I was kind of intrigued as to what his flat looked like. You know, I expected to see this kind of designer flat. And it was all this like very cheap kind of looking carpet and very cheapy wallpaper. It's like he'd left it exactly as he kind of found it almost, you know.
Right, very basic.
Tony, do you remember his flat?
As you described.
It was really kind of basic. It was very, I thought, it reminded me of a working class kind of Manchester home, really, you know, like there weren't any kind of embellishments. The only thing that was like new was the kitchen. It was like, the kitchen had been put in, but it was like everything else, though, the rest of the flat was really kind of sparse almost, you know. And I was like, wow, this is where, but I didn't go into these kind of private bedroom area or anything. I just was in the living room. I was thinking, like, where's the record collection? Yeah.
Did you find it?
No.
Oh. Clearly, he'd seen you coming. Gudrun, did you ever sort of pick up on the kind of thing Bowie would have been exposed to in Berlin? You know, not only books, but media, television, papers. What kind of input?
Yeah.
Painting.
You went to the Romy Haag Club?
The Romy Haag Club?
Yeah, and I went there too.
Chez Romy and the Lutzauer Lampe.
I never went.
You never went there?
In the Beiheimstrasse.
Too expensive.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't go there, it's too expensive.
Yeah, it was expensive. But I went there 2 or 3 times because I wanted to see David Bowie. And I ordered, but you had to order a piccolo, like a little champagne bottle. And I think it was 5 marks.
Yeah, it was.
And that was expensive for me.
Yeah.
But
did you see him?
no. Or maybe, the thing is, maybe I saw him, but I didn't.
It has been.
You were sitting there
so
drinking your
shy.
piccolo and...
I don't think he was hanging out there.
No.
It was been put very often like Romy Haag and David Bowie. No, I don't think it was much of that.
Right.
Romy Haag is a place you could go to, and of course the jungle was a place you could go to, and in the same time, I remember another funny anecdote. I was at that disco, Bowie.
The Bowie disco.
I was there with Zazie de Paris, which worked at Romy Haag, and Jane County.
Oh.
Yeah, Jane County.
And they started playing Heroes. And Jane County went, Blixa, is that David? Should we dance?
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh.
I danced with Jane County to Heroes at a disco called Bowie.
I'm just trying to... Okay. That's such a vivid mental image. I think we should probably leave it there.
Yeah.
But...
Well, you just saw these old photos of me. So
Yeah.
Me and Jane County dancing.
Blixa will be performing later, maybe not dancing, with Nico Wiedemann. Gudrun and Mark will be DJing this evening as well. And I hope you all come along and enjoy. Thank you.